Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. I'm Jordyn and welcome to a fun video that I was inspired to do by the NCAA Collegiate Basketball Tournament that happens every year in March here in the US. If you don't live in the US and don't know what I'm talking about, it's basically all of the best basketball teams doing a tournament. Fans get really excited about it, and there's a bracket that at the start of the tournament everyone can fill out and you can submit it online to win prizes and things. It's kind of similar to fantasy football where you can do it in like smaller groups too. It's kind of fun even if you don't follow basketball. I filled out a bracket this year and my winner pick lost first round, so I haven't been too invested in the tournament otherwise. But anyway, to bring it back to books, I thought it would be fun to do my own little bracket for all of the 2023 releases that I have read so far. I was noticing at the end of February, beginning of March, that I had read a lot of 2023 releases, ones that had already come out at the beginning of the year, as well as some arcs that I received that have not come out yet. So I thought, let me read a bunch more in March and do a little bracket to talk about which one I think is the best, and possibly have some unpopular opinions compared to the general reaction to some of these books so far. So I did make a bracket. I have not filled it out yet. I'm going to be doing that through this video, but I decided to seed the books, which is basically put them in order based on their average rating on Goodreads so far. So the number one seeded book has the highest average rating and the lowest seeded book has the lowest average rating. Again, some of these books haven't even come out yet, so they don't have a ton of ratings, which definitely can skew this, but I thought that was a fun way to set up the bracket and will allow me to have some upsets or opinions where I think the lower rated book is actually better than the higher rated book, if that makes sense. So the first thing I'm going to do for this video is go through all of the books that I've read so far. I'll do it in order, and I would love right off the bat if you have read any of the books that I'm talking about to tell me which one you would pick as the winner of this bracket before I even get into the matchups and talking about which books I liked the best. And if you haven't read any of the books that I'm talking about, this is going to be a great way for you to get some recommendations, find out which ones I really enjoyed, and then you can get your hands on them either now if they're already released, or you can be anticipating them for when they come out in the future. So let's introduce the teams, aka the books. I'm going to go in reverse order, so I have read 18 2023 releases so far. I'm going to talk about number 18 and go up to number 1. So seated in the 18 spot is The House in the Pines by Anna Reyes. This is a mystery thriller book that came out on January 3rd, and it currently has a 3.22 average rating on Goodreads. I'm not going to tell you my opinions quite yet as we're going through the seeds. I'm just going to tell you what these books are about. This is a mystery thriller book. This is about this woman who, when she was younger, her best friend was talking to this guy and mysteriously suddenly dropped dead, which was extremely traumatizing to her, of course. But then now in the present timeline, she sees this viral video of that same guy and another woman dropping dead in front of him. So she takes it upon herself to investigate this guy and try to figure out what's going on. And we also get flashbacks to what happened with that guy in the past. In the 17th spot is The Writing Retreat by Julia Bartz. This is also a mystery thriller. This was released on February 21st of this year and has an average rating of 3.52. This is about a writing retreat that our main character is invited to go to. It's at one of her favorite authors' houses. She really respects this author and she's so excited to learn from her, and then she finds out that her ex-best friend is also going to the retreat. So it has a lot to do with female friendships, friendship dynamics, toxic friendships, and it goes from there. In the 16th spot is The Villa by Rachel Hawkins, another mystery thriller. There definitely is going to be the most mystery thrillers on this list. This also came out on January 3rd and has an average rating of 3.70. This is about two best friends who also are writers. They decide to go on vacation to Italy, rent this private villa. They're trying to get some writing done. They're experimenting with the idea of writing a book together when one of the friends gets infatuated with the story of what happened to the people who lived in the villa in the past. And so it's again a dual timeline narrative being told in present day as well as the 1970s. In the 16th spot is Liar, Dreamer, Thief by Maria Dong. This came out on January 10th and has an average rating of 3.71. This is about a main character who is neurodivergent. I don't remember it ever being specifically called out what she is diagnosed with, but it appears to be some form of OCD where she has these rituals that she calls them, or these compulsions of things she has to do related to counting things a certain number of times or taking a certain number of steps before she leaves her apartment. Things like that that make it a little bit hard for her to get through her day-to-day life. She has a job that she's pretty secure in, but she has a coworker that she is interested in, a little bit infatuated with, and something happens with him that puts her down a rabbit hole of figuring out what happened to him And she also suffers from some delusions or kind of hallucinations of this fantasy world that she thinks is infiltrating her real life. It's kind of a fever dream of a book, but at its core is a really interesting, ominous feeling mystery. In the number 14 spot is Broken Perfect Lies by Katie Wismer. This is a romantic suspense novel pitched as like a grown-up Hannah Montana. The main character in here is a pop star, but when she's on stage, she puts on a wig, has a different persona from her real life. But something has happened recently that is putting her more into danger. So she hired a new bodyguard, and then her and that bodyguard have a developing romance. This released on February 20th and has an average rating of 3.74. In the 13th spot is The Jump by Brittney Morris. This is a contemporary book with a little bit of a sci-fi feel. It's about these 4 high school students who are incredibly wonderful and diverse and complement each other perfectly, but they are on this cryptology team together where they enter code-breaking competitions. They're super passionate about it, and then introduced one day is this like ultimate cryptology competition that they enter and turns out to be maybe a little bit more dangerous than they were expecting. This was released on March 7th of this year and has an average rating of 3.75. In the number 12 spot is I Have Some Questions for You by Rebecca Makkai. I do not own a copy of this book, but I listened to the audiobook through Libro. This was released on February 21st and has an average rating of 3.86. This is similar to The It Girl by Ruth Ware or In My Dreams I Hold a Knife by Ashley Winstead. It's that dark academia type of murder mystery where there's this friend group and one of the members of that group has died. Somebody was convicted and put away for it, but now in present day, the main character is looking back at that incident to figure out if that's really what happened. This was released on February 21st and has an average rating of 3.86. In the number 11 position is Highly Suspicious and Unfairly Cute by Talia Hibbert. This is a young adult romance book about these 2 characters in high school who are going through this wilderness like adventure leadership program trying to get scholarships for college. They were friends when they were younger and then they had a falling out, and now they are forced to be together through this experience and are kind of rekindling their relationship. This was released on January 3rd and has an average rating of 3.88. In the number 10 position, we have Finlay Donovan Jumps the Gun by Elle Cosimano. This is the 3rd book in the Finlay Donovan series, which is kind of a cozy mystery series, but it's a little bit more fun of a thriller of Finlay Donovan who keeps getting caught up in this situation where people think she's a hit woman and she's not trying to kill people, but people are ending up dead and she has to kind of cover them up. This was released on January 31st and has an average rating of 3.90. In the number 9 position is a book called Adrift by Lisa Brideau. This book doesn't come out until May 9th. I did have a NetGalley arc of it. It has an average rating of 3.93 on Goodreads so far. This is an interesting one. It's a science fiction thriller, I would say, about this woman who wakes up on a boat. She's completely alone and she has no memory of who she is or why she's there. I will tell more about my thoughts on this book when we get to the bracket portion. In the number 8 position is Coming Home by Kennedy Ryan. This is an Audible original book. It's a really short audiobook about these 2 characters who are adults. They went to the same high school together. They were friends but never got the chance to be more than that, have always kind of looked back as like the one who got away, and now they are coming back for their homecoming events and a relationship ensues. This was released on February 9th and has an average rating of 4.00. In the number 7 position is The Shards by Bret, Easton, Ellis. This was released on January 17th and has an average rating of 4.01. This is about a group of characters who are friends that all go to the same prep school and they find out about a serial killer and they try to track them down. In the number 6 position is The Girl in the Zoo by Jennifer Lauer. This is a science fiction book about a futuristic world where artificial intelligence has taken over. They are basically picking off humans, and in this situation they have created like a human zoo, and our main character is actually the last human alive in this zoo. So she's trying to escape and also figure out if she's the last human alive in the world or what's going on. This was released on February 14th and has an average rating of 4.02. In the number 5 position, we have The Senator's Wife by Liv Constantine. This doesn't come out until May 23rd. Again, I had a NetGalley arc of it and it has an average rating of 4.04. This is a domestic thriller about a senator's wife who is in kind of a precarious situation with her new husband. She was married before, and so is the senator. Both their spouses ended up dying, and now they're married. So there are definitely rumors flying because he is a senator. He's a highly watched political figure. People are wondering about the motives of why they're married, and then things progress in their relationship. This has an average rating of 4.04. Getting up to the top seeded books, in the number 4 position we have What Lies in the Woods by Kate Alice Marshall. This was released on January 17th and has an average rating of 4.05. This is about a group of women who, when they were younger, when they were kids, they were in the woods and somebody attacked them and tried to kill one of the girls. The other 2 ran for help. They identified who the guy was. He went to prison. And now, once again, in the present day, things are coming out that maybe that situation wasn't what it seemed. In the number 3 position, we have The Last Word by Taylor Adams. This comes out on April 25th, and I was sent a physical ARC from the publisher. It has an average rating of 4.27. This is a pure thriller about this girl who is house sitting at this secluded house on the Washington coast. She loves to read, so she reads books all day. She ends up reading this book by an author that she really hates. She gives it 1 star, writes a negative review for it, and then weird things start happening around her at this house, and she thinks that author is coming after her. Then in the number 2 position, we have Symphony of Secrets by Brendan Slocum. This also comes out in April, on April 18th. I won an ARC copy of this through a Goodreads giveaway, and so far it has an average rating of 4.35. This is about a man who studies classical music. He's actually a professor teaching about classical music. He has been obsessed with this one particular composer his entire life, has done research on him, and one day the estate of that composer contacts him because they want him to do research on some new music that has been found by that composer. And as this professor is digging into that music, he realizes that the composer might not have been the one to actually write the music that has been so popular and renowned. It includes racial elements because the famous composer was white, and this black professor thinks that he was stealing from a black musician. Really interesting in how it includes all of that classical music information. And then in the number 1 spot, the top rated 2023 release that I have read is Final Offer by Lauren Asher. This is an adult romance book. It's actually the 3rd in the series that follows 3 brothers that are all billionaires. They're trying to earn their inheritance from their grandfather, who founded this amusement park called Dreamland. They each have to do a specific task in order to earn that inheritance. And this is the romance of that 3rd brother. This was released on January 31st and has an average rating of 4.35. Okay, so now that we've gone through all of the books that are being included, please let me know your predictions. Let me know which book you think I'm gonna pick as the winner of this bracket, and also let me know of the books you've read, which one you would pick as the winner of this bracket. And now let's get right on into the tournament. So the first round is going to be a couple of play-in games between the bottom 4 teams to figure out which will make it into like the actual 16 team bracket. And the first matchup is going to be between number 16, The Villa, and number 17, The Writing Retreat. This is very interesting because these books are actually very similar, as they both follow writers and specifically female friendships between authors, toxic relationships, all of that. I did rate The Villa 3 stars and The Writing Retreat 4 stars, and I'm going to stick with that as my guiding principle because I do think The Writing Retreat was better. I liked the vibe and the pacing of it more. I think it went into a more interesting and unexpected direction. If you're interested in hearing more of my in-depth thoughts about The Villa, I did actually participate in a book club discussion of this book over on my friend Jess's channel on Reading with Jess. You can go back and watch that live show. We talk all about this book and our feelings on it. We talk spoilers, we talk about the twists and the characters really in depth, so check that out if you want more thoughts. But my winner for this round is going to be The Writing Retreat. The next matchup is going to be between number 15, Liar, Dreamer, Thief, and number 18, The House in the Pines. This is a tough one because I gave both of these 4 stars, and I was surprised to see both of these so low in the ranking. The House in the Pines I think has a really fun twist that I personally haven't read before. I don't think it's necessarily the most original thing ever, and if you have read it before, maybe you'd see it coming, but I thought it was fun. However, I'm going to give this round to Liar, Dreamer, Thief. I loved the vibe of this book. I really loved our main character and was invested in her figuring out what was going on. It was completely unlike anything I've ever read, so for that reason, I'm going to say this is the winner and it's moving on to the next round. And then getting into the main bracket, our first matchup is the number 1 seed, Final Offer by Lauren Asher versus The Writing Retreat by Julia Bartz. And we are going to have our first upset because I really did not like Final Offer by Lauren Asher, which comes as a surprise because this book deals with some really hard-hitting, heavy topics like addiction, alcohol abuse. Our main character has a child, which I always really like in romance books. It's also more of a friends to lovers second chance romance, which is probably my favorite trope. But for me, this one just didn't deliver. I saw no redeeming qualities in the main hero. I didn't think he should be forgiven, or I didn't think he was taking responsibility for his actions as much as he should have been. So I wasn't rooting for the couple, and for that reason, gave this book 2 stars, which means 17 seed, The Writing Retreat, is moving on because, again, I gave this one 4 stars. The next matchup is between 2 books that I don't own. We have 8 seed Coming Home by Kennedy Ryan versus 9 seed Adrift. Coming Home, again, I felt like I should have liked because I like the trope of unrequited high school friends, almost lovers, getting their second chance. But because this was an Audible original, really short novella, I don't feel like I got enough time with these characters, so it ended up just being kind of light and fluffy. It didn't have the emotional depth that I've come to know Kennedy Ryan for, so I gave this one 3 stars. And on the other hand, Adrift, I had no idea what to expect from this book. I had requested it only knowing a little bit about the synopsis and thinking it sounded interesting, and it completely blew my socks off. The pacing of this book was so good, it kept me on my toes the entire time. I loved the sci-fi futuristic elements of it because it does take place a little bit into the future. We've got not only the memory loss technology situation, but also it has a lot to do with climate change and fighting a climate crisis, which I found really interesting. So I ended up rating this one 5 stars, and it's definitely moving on to the next round. In the next matchup, we've got number 4, What Lies in the Woods, against number 13, The Jump. Another interesting matchup that I think is going to end in an upset. What Lies in the Woods, I was a little bit let down by. I have seen really good reviews. Obviously, it's the number 4 ranked book here, so a lot of people really enjoyed it. I found it to just be kind of meh. It reminded me of a lot of other mystery thrillers that I've read. I wasn't overly surprised by anything. It wasn't terrible, but it wasn't great. I think I gave it 3 stars. And The Jump, on the other hand, it's no secret that Brittney Morris is one of my all-time favorite authors. I've loved every book that she puts out. This one just exemplified why. I love the cryptology aspect of it. If you know me, you know I love games, puzzles, riddles, so all of that was up my alley, and I really think her characters in this book were just so great. Again, they were super diverse in every way, racially, ethnically, sexual orientation and identity wise. There's a trans main character as well as a non-binary side character, and there's a neurodivergent other main character, and I feel like they all complemented each other so well. It did not feel like she was just throwing diversity in there for diversity's sake. It really felt like it was saying that diversity is a good thing because diverse people and characters bring different strengths to any friend group, social dynamic group, puzzle solving group. So I loved it so much. It was a fun ride. I gave it 5 stars. Definitely moving on to the next round. Next matchup, again, 2 books that I don't own physically. We've got The Senator's Wife by Liv Constantine and I Have Some Questions for You by Rebecca Makkai. Let's start with I Have Some Questions for You. I did like this one, but because I just compared it to 2 other really similar books, that is kind of indicative of how I felt about this book. I felt like I had read this story before in other books. It's not exactly the same, of course. I just felt pretty mediocre about it the whole time I was reading it. Whereas The Senator's Wife, if you know me and my reading tastes, you know that domestic thrillers are not usually my favorites. However, I did think this one brought something different because of the political elements in it. I liked reading about political figures. I think it made some of the drama a little bit more believable in how people are lying to each other and using each other. I think that happens probably all the time in politics, and it just made like the secret keeping more believable because there is something to gain by lying to each other and cheating on each other, such as money, power, etc. Versus in normal domestic thrillers where it's just like suburban people, I feel like there's not that much to gain. So I don't feel like people keep as many secrets as happen in those books. So at the end of the day, I rated I Have Some Questions for You 3 stars and The Senator's Wife 4 stars. So that is going to be the one moving on to the next round. All right, next up we have number 2 seeded Symphony of Secrets versus number 15 Liar, Dreamer, Thief. This is a little bit of a tough matchup because I do have really good feelings and connotations about both of these books. However, if you saw my best books of last year's video, you'll know that Brandon Slocum actually wrote my number 2 favorite book of all of last year. I was super excited for this follow-up book from him and was hoping it would live up to those expectations, and it totally did. I loved this book so much. This one is unlike anything I've ever read, but so is this one. I love reading about passionate characters in a book who have an interest or a hobby or a career that may not be something I'm personally interested in, but I can tell that they absolutely love it and they just like can't help gushing about it. That was totally present in here. Plus Brandon Slocum has a musical background, so I feel like that's also his passion leading into the book. and it lived up to every expectation that I had, so I rated this one 5 stars. So unfortunately, we're gonna knock out Liar, Dreamer, Thief, and Symphony of Secrets is moving on to the next round. All right, in the next round, we have number 7, The Shards, versus number 10, Finlay Donovan Jumps the Gun. If you saw my latest book of the month reading vlog, you will know that I actually DNF'd this book on page 1, which might be unfair to include it in this type of video where I'm reviewing books and talking about how I liked them when I didn't even really give this one a chance. But based on this book's first sentence, which took up basically the entire first page, I figured the writing style was not going to be for me. So I DNF'd it, so kind of by default, this one is definitely not moving on. Finlay Donovan Jumps the Gun is the 3rd book in a series, so I can't really talk specifics about the plot or how I felt about certain plot elements. I will say that reviews I've seen so far about this book and series in general, a lot of people really loved the first book. So did I. A lot of people were disappointed by the second book. I was a little bit too. And then this 3rd book, I've mostly seen people the most disappointed by this one, but I thought this one was better than the second one. So I ended up rating this book 4 stars. I think it was good for what it is. I think people are just getting bored of what it is, but I still generally enjoyed it. Gave it 4 stars. It's moving on to the next round. All right, the next round we have number 3, The Last Word, versus number 14, Broken Perfect Lies. This is an interesting matchup because I would say these are 2 of the most like pure thrillers out of all of the books that I've read here. And it's interesting that they're being matched up together. Broken Perfect Lies, I really like the idea of it, and I like the idea of romantic suspense books. I feel like the suspense element took a little bit too long for it to get going. By the end, it definitely was fast-paced, twisty-turny. I liked it. Just wish it was there earlier, so I ended up giving this one 3 stars. And The Last Word. This is a wild ride from page 1. I think the author-reviewer dynamics are really interesting and timely in conversations that are happening like on BookTube right now. So I loved that, plus just the pure thrill of this book. It reminded me a lot of the movie Hush, which is on Netflix, where it's just this constant chase and our main character is constantly getting herself into positions where you're like, how is she going to get out of this? I love that. This is the type of book that definitely is going to raise your anxiety as you're reading it, but I enjoyed every second of it. I don't read a lot of pure thrillers. I would say very similar to No Exit. A lot of people loved that book because of that high octane element of it, and I think this completely matches that. And I really loved the coastal isolated house setting, so gave it 5 stars. This is the one moving on. And then the last matchup in this second round of the bracket is number 6, The Girl in the Zoo by Jennifer Lauer, versus number 11, Highly Suspicious and Unfairly Cute by Talia Hibbert. This book, The Girl in the Zoo, I was really excited for, and I thought this was a super interesting premise. I love the idea. Well, I don't love the idea, but I'm intrigued by the idea of AI taking over and what that means for humans when they try to fight back. Unfortunately, this book takes place 6 years after this human has been living at this zoo, so she's kind of become used to it, and I don't think she fights as hard as she would have upon initial capture, if that makes sense. So I think if it would have been set at that time of initial capture, this would have been more interesting and exciting, and it just felt a little bit slow-paced for what it should have been. So I was a bit underwhelmed by this book and ended up rating it 2 stars, which is a bummer. Highly Suspicious and Unfairly Cute is cute. It's a young adult romance, so it can only be so serious. Definitely not as emotional as I like in romance books, but again, they're high schoolers, so they really are just learning to come into themselves and figuring out what they want out of their future. I ended up giving it 3 stars. I thought it was fine. So 2 relatively underwhelming books. I don't have too strong of feelings about either of them, but I am going to advance Highly Suspicious and Unfairly Cute to the next round. All right, we are down to the Elite 8, so things are going to start getting quicker here. Back up to the top of the bracket, we've got number 17, The Writing Retreat, against number 9, Adrift. While I did generally enjoy The Writing Retreat, I did still have some nitpicky issues with it. It didn't completely catch me off guard as one of the best books that I've read, so I'm going to hand this one to Adrift because I did give that one 5 stars and it was such an unexpected surprise. Next up, we've got number 13, The Jump, versus number 5, The Senator's Wife. Again, a pretty easy decision because The Senator's Wife I did generally enjoy. I was pleasantly surprised by it, but it just can't live up to one of my favorites, Brittney Morris and The Jump. Being a 5-star book, the characters in this one were just perfection, so we are going to advance The Jump. Lower half of the bracket, we've got number 2, Symphony of Secrets, versus number 10, Finlay Donovan Jumps the Gun. Can you see where this is going? Symphony of Secrets was 5 stars for me. Finlay Donovan was only 3 stars. I'm happy that you made it to the Elite 8, but you're gone. Definitely not a book that I will be raving about in the future, so gotta hand it to Symphony of Secrets. And then the 4th matchup is The Last Word, seeded number 3 against number 11, Highly Suspicious and Unfairly Cute. I think I've only got room for 1 young adult book in my final 4, so Highly Suspicious and Unfairly Cute was cute, but not a life changer, which means I'm moving on The Last Word, which again, I gave it 5 stars, full of thrills, absolutely loved it. So with that, we move into the final 4 books, which shockingly is 4 5-star books. When I first had this idea, I didn't think that I would have 4 5-star books in the mix, but how fun that I did, and they all made it to the top 4. The seedings just worked out perfectly so they could all get there, but now decisions are going to start getting really difficult. In the top matchup, we have number 9, Adrift, versus number 13, The Jump, and this really is quite difficult. Adrift, I had no expectations for, so it was such a pleasant surprise diving into a thriller, getting some sci-fi, and really just enjoying the whole thrill of the ride. And The Jump, I did have expectations for. I have loved Brittney Morris in the past, so I was hoping this one lived up to those expectations, and luckily it did. It might be my favorite of her books, but I'm not ready to make that decision yet. Of these 2 books, the one that I think will live on in my mind longer, that I will be more likely to recommend to more people, I think is The Jump. Again, the characters are just so good. The diversity and the group dynamics of them, I think other people need to read. Adrift, I think, is going to be perfect for a very niche audience, but there are going to be some people that dislike it. So I think number 13, The Jump, is moving on to the final round. Okay, and then the other 2 books, number 2, Symphony of Secrets, versus number 3, The Last Word. I'm so happy to see that early reviews of both of these books are really, really good, because both of these books are really, really good. Very different vibes. Symphony of Secrets is definitely a mystery at the heart of it, and more of a almost historical fiction kind of character study, whereas The Last Word is just a non-stop thriller. And while I think it's perfect for what it is, I don't think people are going to be surprised that I'm going to pick Symphony of Secrets. The depth is there. The passion for the musical elements are there. There's more to think about in this book, so for that reason I think it will linger on in my mind for longer. And Brandon Slocum is just an all-time favorite author for me personally, so this one is moving to the final round. And now we are here in the final round, 2 books from some of my favorite authors. Any of you who did predictions, did you see this coming? If you've watched my channel for a while, you probably recognized these authors' names. I definitely, before I dove into these books, was hoping they would be favorites of mine, and I'm so happy that they are, that they lived up to my internal hype. Both of these authors have been at the top of my favorite books in years past. Brittney Morris, I think, in 2020 and 2021 maybe, and then Brandon Slocum in 2022. So it's like the battle of the favorites. And what am I gonna do? I think both of these books probably will show up in my end of the year favorites list, and I reserve the right to change my mind later about which one I like better based on longevity and which story sticks with me the most for longer. But gonna go with my gut here, and my number 1 pick for the best 2023 release that I've read so far this year is Symphony of Secrets by Brandon Slocum. I love this book. I'm so impressed by this author. Again, this book is not out yet, so if you're even remotely interested in this book's synopsis, please go give it a pre-order. I have pre-ordered a finished copy because this book's finished cover, I'll put it on the screen, is gorgeous. I really hope that this author has more books up his sleeve, because I will continue to pick up and just eat up every story that he puts out. I think he's a genius. He's a musical genius and a writing genius. So that's it. That's my winner. This is the final time I will ask you to comment, but what do you think of my picks? Did I pick the wrong book in any matchup in your opinion? I can't wait to see what other 2023 new releases I pick up throughout the rest of the year and how they continue to either impress or disappoint me. Let me know if you liked the format of this video and if you'd like to see more bracket or ranking type videos from me in the future. But other than that, I don't think I have anything else. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I will see you in my next one.